All right, welcome back to the No Effects Podcast. I'm your host, Islane, and, well, you can see that it's me again, with guests again. Because, well, the last video performed absolutely fantastic. Best viewed podcast video on my channel so far.
Derek.
Not the most viewed or listened to Spotify podcast, notably, but that's because they're on different metrics. It's kind of weird, but I just tend to kind of put them together and say, hey, this was successful or this wasn't. Whatever the case, this has been the best. It was the best, but it was also a very controversial and very close to the time that topic was happening. You know, the bans and a lot of people saying like, "Screw CEDH, I'm selling it out. I'm not going to play Magic anymore." And us trying to be like, "No, come over here, come join us, come join us."
We have cookies.
Yeah, so with that, that discussion revolved around several community members that could provide some insight as to, you know, the different comings and goings that are happening within the community. We brought on Gator, who's a tournament grinder, brewer, also podcaster. We brought on Derek to represent the RC, and we brought on Bobby to represent the, you know, a TO's perspective, and also being a player, tournament grinder, etc. So basically everybody had the same sort of resume, just with like that one thing that was a specialty, and it filled in, and I thought we had a great conversation, and again, it performed well. So I thought, why not piggyback off of that and dive a little bit deeper into the rules committee itself, because we talk about brewing all the time on the podcast. We talk about card quality. We talk about various, you know, brand new sets that come out. You do set reviews. We do all that kind of stuff that, you know, a typical CEDH channel is going to be doing. And so people who are already familiar with my podcast and with this channel overall, like, that's what they're here for, is CEDH stuff. But I'm trying to kind of focus a little bit of attention or shine some light on CPDH, which I've been doing anyhow for a couple years now, but it's been little tidbits here and there, and I'm just increasing the content as I can to, you know, keep putting it in the limelight, because it's great. I've been having a blast with it. The tournament scene is growing. It's basically on the same trajectory as CEDH is, but doesn't have the bans, etc., and that was a big part of it. And me and Derek touched on that a little bit in the last episode, where we talked about how there's only the 2 cards banned, and that there, yada yada, hasn't really been a whole lot of other things, but there have been considerations, conversations. I thought maybe we could get a little more insight to that. But I think the best place to start, well, I guess I haven't even introduced you guys technically, even though I'm sure everybody that's here already knows. Clay's up there, Derek's up there. These 2 gentlemen are 2 of, I don't know how many the total is now, members of the Pauper Commander Rules Committee.
It's 5.
Okay, and then you guys have like a little bit of a CAG, don't you?
We do.
Yeah. So there's
a very similar structure to EDH. I mean, it's...
Well, the way it was. Now,
works.
We don't really know.
But it's something that worked, I think, quite well. You became a part of the seams at the end there, but...
When you use it, it works well. Yeah. So yeah, that's a new. Well, actually, the reduction to 5 RC members and the addition of the CAG actually happened earlier this year. So
yeah, well, and they had restructured a couple times too, because it was just the original people, and then they brought in the CAG, and then unfortunately Sheldon passed. Rest in peace. And then, you know, I think it was Jim and Olivia somebody that popped in. But yeah, they did, since they took over, and it was kind of like a long run of like just nothing's getting banned and nothing's happening and people are complaining like these things need to happen, or like, can we at least get some of the shit off the ban list? Because like, I want to play Fast Bond. This guy wants to play, you know, do these dumb cards that, like, who cares? You're playing CDH anyway. Why does it matter?
Recurring nightmare.
Yeah, anything, you know, whatever. So that happens, and people got mad, and they were thinking about Pauper. So I just thought maybe, you know, with that direct comparison of how people kind of went from like having some sort of faith in that establishment, as it were, and then kind of losing it there towards the end. Let's just start from the beginning. How did you guys, were you original founding members? How did you get involved? If not, how did it come about that people were like, we're going to sit down and we're going to make this happen?
Take it away, Derek.
Ironically enough, I am in fact the old timer in this scenario. So I was involved with PDH Home Base back before it was kind of like the central hub of the format. It was run by a Reddit user named Salty River, who was basically just like writing articles by himself just about Pauper Commander at the time. This is before there was any formalized rule set. I don't think I mentioned it on our last chat, but there have been a couple like previous attempts to formalize a rule set for Pauper Commander in the past, like in the very early, you know, like MTG Salvation Forum days.
2009.
Yeah.
2012.
Yeah, 2000.
Yeah.
Like 2009 to 2014 or so. There were two major attempts. One kind of failed initially, very similar to the rules that we have now, but it's somebody that's trying to take ownership of something, and everybody chipped in with their 2 cents, and it kind of
like what just happened with that proposed PDH RC that
sort of
everybody
nothing
said
really
no.
caught on.
Yeah.
And then the next, I think it was the following year, another forum user started a website, like a Wixley website, like one of those build your own website kinds of things.
Yeah.
Tried another attempt to make the official rules for the format. It didn't really catch on either. What you had at that time was just kind of disparate play groups doing kind of their own thing, kind of centered around similar sets of rules. You find kind of a grab bag of things between, uncommon creatures, your commander, 30 life, 16 commander damage. Some people play with 40 life. The PDH pals still play with 40 life. They just do their own thing because who cares?
Do they really? I never even noticed that.
Yeah, they do. They do all kinds of their own thing, and more.
Well, yeah, that's their jam, right?
Yeah. So what Salty River tried, his ambition at the time was to bring on a bunch of writers to write more articles, grow the site, and then he identified that there was no central hub for the format and wanted to make PDH Homebase exactly that. Right. So he brought on myself. I think Ruffigan was one of the early ones too. He's still on the RC with us now. And a couple other folks who have kind of phased out of the format. We don't really see much, or I don't think we've heard from any of those people in quite a number of years. But we were just writing articles at the time. And then at some point, we just decided to kind of go around and investigate all the different ways that we could find that people were playing Pauper Commander, whether it was on tapped out primers, forum posts, other defunct websites, anywhere where we could find reference.
Yeah, the original time that I tried to do it, I had just had a conversation with a friend, and I had just heard about it through the pipeline, because I knew what Pauper 60 card was, because that's been around for a longer time, I believe. But I just remember hearing about playing Pauper Commander, and that having the one stipulation that always stuck in my mind was it was that uncommon commander, all 99s.
That's something that we've tried to preserve really hard.
And that was dude, I have boxes of comments. This makes me have a reason to play with this stuff. And so I ended up Googling and finding deck stats, I think it was, where there was a tier list. And that was what we kind of did our first experiment with. And that's still to this day my most viewed video on my channel.
Yeah, there's all kinds of resources like these that were out there at the time. And it was something where, playing Commander with an uncommon creature instead of a legend, or playing rather with 99 commons, right? Just a full common deck. This is a deck building restriction that any Johnny what's-his-name can just come up with on their own. But we really wanted to make it a concerted format that we could grow and spread. So that's kind of what we ended up doing. We went around, like I said, to all these different places and tried to kind of aggregate as many different rule sets as possible and kind of find the line of best fit through all of them to just kind of remain truthful and faithful to what the format had been up to that point, while also just providing the best kind of path for growth. And I think that's exactly what we have today. 30 life, 16 commander damage, 99 commons. Commander has to be an uncommon creature, and that's kind of the foundational rules that we've built everything on. As we got bigger, more and more people got involved. Alcadron, who was on the rules committee, got involved at a later date. Did some editing for the PDH Homebase articles for a time before we stopped writing entirely for that. And Paul,
isn't he on the pals?
On the RC as well. Dave is not. No,
honorary.
Honorary.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
But other people got involved, and it wasn't really until we wanted to start banning things that the need for a explicit rules committee was thrown around. We had done some rules committee-ish things, not under that banner really. For example, when adventures were released in Eldraine, and there were uncommon adventure creatures and there were no legendary adventure creatures, so we kind of had to ourselves determine how these cards worked, and that's kind of the information that we put out there is this is how this functions, because everybody we found had different ideas about how these things should work in the command zone. So the way that they work, obviously, is the way they work now in regular Commander as well. Is you can cast the adventure half or the creature half. If you cast the adventure half, it goes to exile. You can cast it for its normal mana cost without commander tax. Whatever you cast from the command zone does have commander tax, right? So all that stuff we decided on when we wanted to ban Mystic Study and Mystic Remora. That's when we kind of more or less codified a rules committee, because you can't really ban cards without having some authority to do it under.
Right.
So,
and then how did you guys convince people to just accept it, though? That's where
we were all pretty,
We said please.
Members. We
Nice.
PDH Home Base had been pushed as like a central hub of the format for several years at that point. We were all pretty substantial community members. We ran the PDH Home Base Discord server. We had a lot of authority in the format, just not under that kind of codified banner.
It seems kind of wild that you were able to do that with people who were that, and arguably the people who were trying to do the PDH RC thing recently had some of the similar pedigrees. Now, granted, some of them also had some stuff in the background that wasn't great.
Yeah. Well, the big difference is that PDH
we're not going to say that like they were the best choices or that anything like that. But at the same time, like they tried to do the same thing, grassroots something, and they had some of those. Well, those things.
They didn't put the necessary. So all right.
There wasn't a competing vision which was like a huge benefit.
Right. Well, with the CDH folks, the difference here is that these folks, and I say these guys because I came on for the Mystic ban. They put the work in. They'd spent years in the trenches, working through the player base, all the questions, growing the various socials and all of that. The CEDH guys who did that thing.
Well, but my point was they all had all of those things already. So just coming together as like a group should have theoretically worked just the same. Until everybody was like, "How dare you? You don't have." Well,
that's the point. Is they didn't put in the groundwork working towards that goal. They were already in the space. They were already in the space as TOs and players and all of that. And what they did was like, oh, well, by virtue of my status, I should just be this. And it doesn't work that way.
Not to say that it worked that way for y'all, but that was kind of what was being described. So that's why I was making the correlation.
I also think that a lot of people kind of probably already viewed this as something of a rules committee anyway.
Sure. Now, if that's already
actively managing the format to that point,
and if it's small enough, I guess that can be possible. Sure.
Right. It definitely
is probably bigger. Sure.
It's a lot bigger.
Yeah, fair.
And it was something that I think a lot of people gave us a lot of credit for doing.
You didn't get any pushback at all?
Not really.
That's not. No, I mean, that's honestly very cool, and that goes to show that the community is nice. Or nicer, more welcoming.
I think that was like a big thing. But yeah, I mean, at that point, we had expanded the rules committee to bring on some more competitive-minded folks, Clay among them, and then we were operating at like a 10-member threshold, I think, at that point. So pretty bloated, which made it difficult to communicate in a lot of ways. But we were able to manage the format pretty well in the meantime, I think, at least. And then up until this year, where we realized that a lot of our ambitions for the format involved a lot more active, direct communication with one another. There were a lot of folks that weren't as active or wanted out. So we decided to just restructure the whole thing and then to bring on a CAG to kind of, make up for that lack of diversity amongst the five of us. We have like pretty good global representation, a lot of good, like high profile community members who manage communities who are able to see what people are thinking, provide a lot of good input. And we've already utilized them quite a bit to this point. So it's been pretty successful so far. I'm really optimistic.
So Clay, you didn't really answer the question as far as like perhaps how you got involved.
I was running the tryhards before the Common Connoisseurs is called the tryhards.
Yeah.
So I was running a competitively minded Discord server, had a competitively minded YouTube associated with it. And I got tired of the politics. So around the end of 2020, I kind of got tired of the politics of CDH and was like, I want to try something different. So I don't remember exactly how I stumbled on the competitive version of Pauper Commander, but we got in and I started making more and more and more content for a while. I think I was the largest.
You're the only one I watched, and I didn't really even know anything about Pauper. I was just watching because it was like, this is different, and I'm interested. I guess everybody out there, you can blame Clay if you don't like me, and I'm in this space now. It's basically Clay's fault. We'll just say that.
I accept. Yeah. So, I mean, I would like to think that I was putting tremendous effort towards growing and expanding the format, and that was recognized. I'd like to think that was the case.
I mean, like I said, you were the only person I knew about. And then it was kind of your expansion into the Comic Connoisseurs thing and bringing Ryan in that exposed me to like other people that I hadn't really interacted with. Mm-hmm. And then I just got a little more active myself, where I was actually pushing to try and get games going and interacting with our people. And then Sanctuary, I think, is really the thing that pushed me, is that that's where it kind of became, that was the central hub. That was like our bar. That was our playing hub for me. Because I didn't get in on board with your server back in the tryhard days. Like, I might have been on it, but I didn't interact or do anything there. So, like, had I have been more involved back then, maybe it'd be different. But Sanctuary kind of became home for me as far as, like, trying to find LFGs. Because it's people that are trying to prove and or build and or brew for tournament play. So that's where I wanted to be, to like try and find the best stuff, right? So
yeah, it's kind of what Clay was trying to do too. I mean, up until that point, like CPDH was mostly just a pretty grindy, combo-dominated European metagame at the time,
with 6 people.
With 6 people, forming the absolute core of it. And like, I think that initial tier list on deck stats is probably one of theirs, if I remember correctly. Crash's tier list was on deck stats.
Yeah, that was just one. I don't even remember where I found it. I think I just Googled like tier list and then found that. And then I told everybody nobody can play Tatiova because that's boring. Like, why do we want to play the absolute best thing? Let's play other shit. Try to be creative here.
Clay was what we identified was that he was pretty responsible for like broadening the competitive metagame and kind of approaching it from a different perspective. The competitive metagame at the time was very closed off. Like, these are things that are identified as being the best, and if you're not playing those, then you're not playing competitive Pauper Commander.
This is literally the conversation I just had with Reckless. Like, I'm
right, and
to break those.
And Clay's whole thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that anything can work. You just have to prove it. And that's kind of what my understanding of common connoisseurs and tryhards and all that stuff came from that. Clay putting together a decklist database and all these things of competitive decks, along with I think the Hex Drinkers at the time and Ryan as well. I think y'all were involved with that.
So Arctech Tech recognition, that was me. Moxfield recognition, that was me. Scryfall recognition, I hand built with 2 other people. I hand built the JSON file that's used for card legality. First playing with power video, which got us big on the map. First community built decklist database.
Well, and I don't know if it's public knowledge, so I can cut this if need be. But you did discuss a little bit. I think it was at the end of your interview with Ryan about like some improvements, and I went and checked them out as far as like being able to sort, with like player data, and a lot of that stuff. Like,
you can sort
some
by
improvements that you've made, basically. Like, if you want to share that now, that's great. I mean,
absolutely. Cool. So the goal of CPDH.guide is not for me to profess to you what the best decks are, because I think that's stupid.
I like doing that because I'm stupid.
So what I'm trying to do is provide you with the data. And that's the thing, like the quarterly reports and stuff we do is all historical narrative. We talk about things in the past because we're trying to help you understand that this is an undulating roller coaster that where it swings, it's going to swing back. Right. Exactly. I mean, it's not necessarily not predictive,
but
and so historically, a lot of the stuff was based in like sorting by date. So if you knew that Sanctuary whatever was in whatever month, you could select that date range for that. Well, I got tired of that, so I added an event drop down. You can actually specifically go event by event and
I searched
see what
up
was being played at the time.
My record is awful in tournaments. I searched up you. You've got a very nice looking report card. Gator looks pretty good. Ryan looks pretty good. I didn't look up Derek. So, I got bored for a while.
This is why you shouldn't worry about that. And I'll tell you.
Oh, I'm not worried about it. I just think it's funny that it's like all these zeros.
Because somebody threw that in my face once. That rat bastard. He's like, I was like, hey, I have a record playing in tournaments. It was a squabble between myself and a jerk. I should have known better. But I'm like, here's my record. It's public. You can find it, by searching it up. And it's like, oh, you stink. And it's like, yeah, I play experimental decks. Of course, I'm going to have a bad record.
Well, and that's something I've been doing too.
So. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. If for you out there, if you have a poor record as reflected in the tournament data, who gives a shit? You're building something, and eventually you'll be able to come at it like clockwork. You'll be fine.
Oh, I can pilot the shit out of my deck that I've played the most, the 3 tournaments. It's just not gotten me any wins because, well, initially it was a little too slow. So it couldn't quite get there in time, and now it's fast enough to get there in time, provided there isn't something crazy like the thing that we experienced with the Lily Splash Mentor, where we spent 30 minutes trying to figure out how to kill him on the stack. Had I gotten back like not even 30 seconds of that time, if I got that back, the dude passed to me, I fucking top deck, and I win. I had it. It was there, and it was going to be such an epic story to tell, and I didn't get the win, and I was so mad. Anyhow, I only gotten draws with Severus in tournament, which sucks, because I've won with it so many times. On streams, just in gameplay. It pisses me off. I get into tournaments, and then it's just like, the luck is either not there, or this or that, or I just horribly misplay. And like, I've seen where I've horribly misplayed before, and this tournament, I felt like I played clean. Everything went pretty well. I don't think I misplayed really anything, so like, I feel pretty good about it. And, you know, it is the same basic list that Gator and Kunks were both playing, and Gator got it to top 4, and it could have been me just as easily, because if I would have gotten that first win. The second game blowout, nothing I could do about it. But the third game, me and Gator had to go head-to-head, and I thought I had it. I thought I had it so time. Yeah, it was just, if I would have gotten the 2, he got the 2 wins. If I would have got the 2 wins, I'd have been in the final. You know, maybe then I won. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah,
but that just to me proved that it worked. That I got it, somebody got it in the top 4, and Gators also told me in his local Florida meta that it has actually topped tournaments, but I don't know details because there's no receipts for any of that. Well, unfortunately, this is
something that's pretty interesting about the format and kind of how we are able to govern it. Is that right now, as far as like competitive stuff goes, the format's like pretty wide open and underexplored. You have a lot of people who are not really refining a lot of decks. They're brewing a lot of decks, playing them, failing, and they're not refining them. So there's a lot of like ideas that are formed that are not fully explored. So it's very easy to come in and pick something up because you'll have something to go off of.
Right.
And then
like a rough
do what
draft.
you want to do with it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like people are always brewing something. That's kind of one thing about it being like a fresher format is a lot of people who are trying to prove themselves as like a brewer, people who are trying to become known for a thing, and then they fail. And
hello.
Yeah. But where you are different is that most people just fail and move on to the next one. Whereas you've stuck with Sivers for a long time, and I think that work is starting to pay off.
Right.
In a pretty significant
However,
way.
I've already gone on record saying I am playing Arabelle in the next tournament, like bar none. I'm
surprised we didn't see any this past.
I wanted to play it, but I had already committed to doing the common theory thing, so it was a bummer. But yeah.
But this dynamic factors in a lot to how we kind of have to approach governing the format too, because it's really hard to pull the trigger on bans when we don't even have like a good idea of what like a coalesced metagame is in terms of like online results, because the online metagame is a lot different from local metagames.
Say that one more time.
The online metagame is so different than any local paper metagame that you'll find.
It's globally influenced, right?
Yeah. Like you had Clay had a run of several tournaments where he either won or placed very high running with Lay and Loreweaver. And other Simic Combat decks have been doing very well recently, but the thing about it is like we can't really. It's hard to justify banning a card to weaken those decks when there's so many other externalities that account for that. Like,
well, I can see an argument for like, okay, so like, hear me out. Yep. Mystic, only 2 bans in the format, and they're exclusively blue cards. And it made it to where, as we discussed last time, it made it to where if you weren't playing blue, what were you doing? You're doing it wrong, right? Like, why are you not playing blue? Because you have access to the 2 best cards in the entire format, probably. The closest comparison I can make to something like that's a one-off that is ultimately powerful and does not have any sort of comparison is Oubliette. So where's Oubliette at on the ban watch list? Like, hit me. Give me the insider spice. I mean, come on.
Oubliette is something that gets talked about a lot. I
don't care. I think it's fine, but I'm just saying.
No, I think so too. I think that it gets a lot of hate for the very simple reason that it is a removal spell that can be used in certain situations to make people feel bad. I think that's the biggest argument against the card, and I don't think that's a ban-worthy argument, to be perfectly honest.
No, that's a casual argument, and that's kind of how the other rules company used to operate.
Well, in fairness, don't forget, there is consideration for, both sides. Now, about a year ago, Oubliette Oubliette ban flag was flying high about a year ago now, Derek. And I don't know if it was what we somewhat forget is that we are talking about these items like feverishly, but nobody really knows that. So
that was another question I was going to say is like, do you guys do a quarterly update? I know you do the thing on on the guide with puzzle and etc. And I can't remember the guy's name that gets your data or crunches your numbers.
Bodarn.
Yeah, Bodarn. I know you've been doing that, but like, admittedly, even though I'm someone who's entrenched in this format, I don't even have that connection with you guys to where I'm like, I know exactly where to go to see a quarterly update where you write out your guys' thoughts or your meetings or anything of that sort of nature.
We have not in any kind of scheduled capacity. It's something that we're going to start doing.
Great.
But this year...
I think that would be helpful because honestly, it does kind of seem like you guys aren't doing anything or looking at bans or even thinking about bans. It's almost like as if you're just not there, so to speak. And I'm not saying that in a negative fashion because I interact with you guys all the time, but I'm entrenched.
Right.
The average Joe doesn't even probably know who you are.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why we scaled everything back as far as like the rules committee goes, because we want to be able to do these things. It's something that we've identified that we need to be doing, so that's kind of the goal. And there's a lot of organizational things that have been going on that we've been ironing out, and with the advisory group and all this stuff. So we're kind of getting all of our ducks in a row now that everything's kind of settled down and stabilized a bit.
You're doing the work, like you said, the other guys should have done.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. As far as bans go, I don't think we're really watching anything in particular. Oubliette is something that gets brought up a lot because it has a lot of like big emotions behind it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone in the competitive scene really cares about it one way or the other. I don't think they want it to get banned. I don't think there's a lot of people in casual that want to get banned, but the problem, again, is that like this is a card that can be used sometimes. If it's used specifically on someone's commander, it feels bad if your commander phased out. And that's not to say that like there isn't counterplay to this card. It exists, but it's I don't know. It carries a lot of negative feelings.
Yeah, the person who plays the oubliette is infinitely targeted to death by the person who's affected by the oubliette. Right. So what happens is it creates this severe game imbalance until the oubliette is gone, either by vanishing because the player is dead or removed.
And a big thing about it is it's not a problem with the card necessarily, because the player has to be the one to choose to make somebody feel that way with oubliette. Like, the card as printed is not something that says, ETB phase out target player's commander. It phases out a creature, and you can use it to do that to somebody if you want. It's a bad manners thing, just like mass land destruction in a casual game is a bad manners thing in most situations.
Right, but we're playing, I mean, generally speaking, I'm keeping this on the more up and up on the commander side, or the competitive side, but like...
Right. It's not a problem in competitive whatsoever.
But even then, it does create that feel about it. It does create that imbalance, because I've done it myself, where I've oublietted a Dargo because I knew the Dargo was trying to kill me, and then they just proceeded to kill me with other things, and it didn't work out. Or had the other thing where I've held an oubliette for turns, because I knew it was going to be that removal tool to make sure that I didn't die, or to make sure that I got the win. And in that case, it's very powerful, and I think it's you're using it for its intended purpose rather than just making somebody cry.
Yeah, in a competitive game, it has a lot less baggage attached to it, because the objectives of the format and the objectives of the card are kind of in alignment, or I shouldn't say format, metagame. In that it's different than a card like Iona that locks somebody out of the game, right? In the sense that like Iona just does that. Oubliette, you need to target someone specifically to do that. The card has other applications than locking somebody out of the game. Not even locking somebody out of the game. So I think it's a card that has been very successful in self-selecting itself out of casual games. People who hate the card don't play it, which is fine. People who want to play with the card, where that is acceptable, are allowed to play it. I'm generally pretty anti-ban, so I'm happy with that.
Okay, so like I'm anti-ban too, and that's basically the same argument you could say about Dockside, because it weeds itself out of casual games because they don't have the same sort of acceleration, and they don't play the same sheer amount of rocks that fast, to where Dockside is even a remarkable catch-up tool.
It's the enchantments in casual games that Dockside plays.
I would push back on that, because I have played a lot of casual Commander, not as much recently, but I have played a lot in the past, and Dockside does show up a lot. And it does completely.
But I've also seen people play Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus in casual, and true. Like, I don't like Mana Crypt in casual. I think it's a little too pushed.
Yeah,
Jeweled
I think
Lotus probably a little too pushed too.
Being on a creature makes it an entirely different beast, in the same way that like Primeval Titan was banned, because when you play a Primeval Titan, the game revolves around Primeval Titan. Like, that's the centerpiece of the game going forward. Everyone's copying it, stealing it.
Dockside does the same thing, because it's Dockside, then it's clone, and then everybody does it, and somebody wins, or everybody just does whatever. But it's just, I thought it felt like it self-regulated, though, because even in a casual game, if you do get 10 mana off of Dockside, okay, so you drop one big fatty. and then somebody goes swords. So what? Who cares? It self-regulates, like you say. I think it scales with power level.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think self-selection as far as problematic things is a fine argument.
I was against whole breacher getting banned, so.
I disagree a little bit in terms of like the nature of Dockside, but I mean I don't want to get into that. That's not
I was actually trying to get to that sort of correlation because the way that you approached your thought process with the Oubliette ban, I was gonna say what would your thought process be with the Dockside ban, and you've just said it. So
I have something relative to that too.
Sure.
So specific to Pauper Commander, it's my goal if we had an egregious Dockside type card. Oubliette, whatever, right? I'm intricately and extensively like focused on those environments like an FNM, right? Where you're not in your play group and you don't have that social understanding that I don't do this thing. So I want strangers to be able to come together and have some sort of standardized play experience. So if you're showing up to an FNM, to Derek's point, if you're showing up to an FNM and you're basically jamming Oubliette just to make people feel bad, there's not much we can do about that because they'll just express that douchebaggery, in a different way.
But in that community, then no one's going to really play with you anymore. So, I mean, it works itself out that way.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So with that said, okay, so we kind of have your history or the history of the RC. We have your kind of ban philosophy, so to speak. You've alluded to a lot of extra work going on behind the scenes, and I don't know what you guys can't spoil. I understand there's not like an NDA, but so to speak. So like, what can you? Is there anything you can share about? Here, how about this? Can I just have your opinion without it having to be off the record? You're not RC members. You're just players of the game. What did you guys think? I don't know if you watched it, but I edited it, so I'm familiar. The Common Theory episode where they were talking about adding legality to the common backgrounds. I've
got some opinions on this.
I think it's a fucking great idea. I'm really for it, and if I can influence you, I want to, but obviously I can't. So we're just gonna say, what do you think?
Go ahead, Clay.
There's some misconceptions about Pauper Commander that I tend to think about when we start looking at these common backgrounds. Now, Derek doesn't think about these things the same way, which is why I kind of wanted to go first. There's many things that differentiate Pauper Commander from regular Commander. The first being legendary creature, right? We don't require a legendary creature, right? Yeah. When people think regular Commander, they think legendary creature, but there's also another caveat in there. It's a little phrase that says, can be your commander, right? So those are synonymous with big Commander, big EDH, that format. Now, I tend to believe, and I say it this way very specifically, that Pauper Commander is a very EDH-like, Commander-esque type format because we borrow a lot of things from them, but we're not exactly the same. So when people migrate from one format to ours, they tend to bring these preconceptions about legendaries are the thing, but see, that's the thing. That is a thing that you can do in Commander because that's what Commander is. You can't do them in Pauper Commander because that's not what Pauper Commander is. We don't have the legendary requirement. Backgrounds are legendary enchantments, regardless of rarity. And we don't have that contingency regarding this can be your commander or the stapling on, via partner or background, or, that stapling on of one card selecting another specifically because it's commander-esque. We don't have those things binding us. Ours
is strictly uncommon. Yeah.
Strictly uncommon
and it makes
creature.
Sense.
So when I made a comment to a person after that video, I was like, "You guys didn't explain why it wasn't legal." And we did. No, I just explained to you. Yeah. I just explained to you why it's not legal because it can't be legal because that's not our format. So that's the way that I tend to think about those things. Derek's going to be more eloquent.
It's not far off. I mean, so. to be perfectly clear, like, it's not a power level issue at all. The power level of the cards has nothing to do why they are not legal.
Oh, I know that.
I just want to make that clear for people who think that it might be something where, like, oh, of course they're not going to make Keepsake legal because it's, whatever. If the situation was reversed and the bad ones were all commons, then I'd still feel the same way because it's backed up by a lot of other factors. So a lot of the infrastructure of the format supports this decision. Like Clay said, you have things like can be your commander. That sort of text runs you into problems if you don't explicitly have rules infrastructure like to hedge that. Like, for example, you look at Oathbreaker. Shurikai Genesis Engine can be your Oathbreaker. It's a format about planeswalkers, and you can have a legendary artifact be your commander because it says can be your commander on the card. I don't like that, and I don't want that for this format. I want it to be consistent, and I want it to be thematic and flavorful, right?
I think the pushback argument is that they are still backgrounds, and if these backgrounds are legal, why not all of them that are format legal? But
the background argument is from the perspective of commander,
right? And I fully understand that.
Well, I'll explain it this way, like. In the comprehensive rules for backgrounds, right? It's like the card is legendary. In the specific rules of backgrounds, I believe the text is you can have it as your partner commander if it's a legendary background or a legendary enchantment that is a background or something like that. It specifically like references it being a legendary enchantment, which is redundant. The card is like all the backgrounds are legendary. Why does it need to be codified in the rules? Because that's what Commander cares about. When we were looking at that, like I saw that language that clearly very indicated to me that these are cards that are designed to be your commander in a format where legendary things matter. This format is not that. This format is a format where rarity is the overarching fundamental infrastructure of the format. Right. So to me, it was very clear that like if you just swap out legendary in that comprehensive rules text for uncommon, that does the same for our purposes, right? It highlights that rarity as the thing that matters to our format in terms of what is allowed into the command zone.
And that's perfectly clear. When I said pushback, it wasn't so much that it's like I don't understand that, or that people who were pushing back, or even these guys for suggesting it, they're not suggesting it because they don't understand the way the rules work. It was just like, can we make an exception? Mm-hmm. And then I understand that then there's all these other infinite possibilities of exceptions, but I don't see them as being arguable, whereas I see this one being something where you could be like, yes, we had this standing, and now we've reevaluated, and we think that this opens up a lot of extra possibilities for brewing in this partner space, so we want to allow this to happen. Well, I guess it doesn't matter, because the tournament individual TOs can just say, hey, this is legal, and boom, they're allowed
to, certainly. Yeah, Dallas does this with his...
I guess we could already rule zero it, but it's just something where we kind of wanted it to be legal because we saw all this brewing potential.
Right, and this is something that... there's two things. First is this idea that like a lot of other calls for exceptions don't have as much standing, and the minute you start allowing
I'm not even trying to say that.
I'm not saying that you're making an argument one or the other. I'm just saying this is stuff that I've heard in terms of arguments for or against. People say, this is something worth making an exception for. The minute you allow you make one exception, then it's harder to justify not making more.
Of course.
And I don't think this is something. I don't think this is something that's worth opening up that can of worms. It's 5 cards. I understand that like people want these cards. They are more powerful than a lot of the options that are available at Uncommon, and I get that, and they're more exciting than a lot of those cards.
It's weird, isn't it?
But
it's kind of weird the way that is.
I'm very unsympathetic to the I want more options to brew argument.
When you have thousands,
when the format is so wide open and unexplored that people already want more things to do, I think that we're going to get more things as more sets are released. We have a tremendous influx of new cards every set, even reprint sets that Commander doesn't get. So the format is always growing, always evolving. If we're so like hard up for aggro options right now, which I don't think is the case, I think we will get those cards inevitably, and I don't think we need to kind of erode the integrity of the rules that we already have in order to achieve that artificially.
Yeah, and of course, I agree. I said I'm all for it, but I was never saying like I'm trying to say, fuck you guys, do this because I want it, because I'm entitled.
We know you're the kingpin of this. Don't you shy away.
Nobody would be upset if we had access to these cards to play with. I mean, nobody would be. It's not a big deal. It's more just...
You know what? I'm going to use it as more of a content thing. And I'll just have whoever's interested in doing that, we'll all brew it up, and we'll play it and do a rule zero. And
your rule set has to stand for something, or it doesn't stand for anything. Once you start, and I hate to do that slippery slope bullshit, but once you start down that road, You know, we lose our uniqueness and distinctness.
The integrity, yeah.
The way that it is now, the way that we've structured and things that we've chosen to prioritize are overall net positives, and I think are going to do us a service going forward. And I understand, like, it sucks to not have access to those cards, but I think that the gains long term are better, especially like when new people are in the format. You want to keep exceptions to a minimum. You want to keep ban lists to a minimum. You want to keep the amount of yes ands to a minimum so that people can just dive in and just start doing things, you know.
But then, you know, there's also that thing where it was like when they printed Companion and like Lutri was banned before it even came out because it like, ooh, everybody's going to play it. It's going to alter the format. It's warping, blah, blah, blah. So they made this exception kind of thing. Not an exception really, but it's on kind of a similar tangent. Regardless, I'm not trying to argue that you guys are wrong. I totally agree with you. As far as like the integrity of the rule set, this is what the basis is. And I think
thanks, Islane. We know we're right.
I think there's a lot of misinformation.
Well, the way that
is going around about the backgrounds thing. So I'm happy to talk about it. Like,
you kind of clarified there too, which you did say that wasn't clarified, and it is a good point that it's not the legendary thing that matters; it's the uncommon rarity that matters, and that is
this is not Commander. This is not Commander. This is Pauper Commander, and not to drive that home. This is Pauper Commander. This is not EDH.
And like that was the thing when we were like putting together the rule set is that was the one overarching thing that we found when we were assembling a rule set is that uncommons were always it was always uncommons.
Have we had an uncommon planeswalker that says it can be a commander yet?
No.
Or you haven't had to jump through that hurdle yet?
No.
Okay.
It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter anyway because we don't remember. Can be your commander is not something that we consider when.
Oh, okay. Well, because I didn't think there was anything in the format yet that was that.
There's not. I think it's worth going through. So there is language in our comprehensive rules that says that things that have the text can be your commander also still have to be uncommons, so that we avoid the Shorakai problem.
Well, and that was my point. Was if we have gotten uncommon planeswalkers. They just haven't can be your commander. So if that was printed, would it be legal in CPDH or Pauper?
I don't see why not. I mean, it's kind of a necessary thing that we have to limit things to uncommons, especially when it comes to like partners and all these weird cases. And I understand that it turns off a lot of people sometimes, but I think it's good for the long-term health of the format.
No, I mean it is a completely different format too, and like as somebody who came from CDH full time to playing this a good measure of my time now, and it's been increasing over time. It is a different format, but then there are these like cards like Arabella that gets printed, and you're just like so excited and like, oh my god, this is gonna be so good, and like we have that same thing. The brewing is there, but then there's like all this other stuff, like the one card that Heartless brought up was like this dog shit fucking like mono white card from like 20 years ago or something, and it was like he's like, yeah, we're trying to push this right now, and I was like, why? And then as I started to learn who he was as a person, I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. And I've been that kind of person too. So the format is definitely underexplored already. So yes, I understand why you wouldn't want to just clamor to people because this is what I want. I can just see the point where it's like it's only 5 cards. Like who gives a shit? It's 5 cards that you made an exception for. People make exceptions. The fucking Wizards themselves made exceptions for dumbass fucking unset cards to be legal.
And where did that get them?
Oh, Saw and Half is amazing, but stickers, and like the other stuff, but like here we are. You guys had to figure out what to do with stickers too, right? So there was that whole bullshit, and thankfully you didn't have to worry about the attractions or any of the other stuff because they just aren't a thing. Right. But like, it's just like every time something new comes out, you guys have to reconsider all of these options and all these things, and I get that.
That said, if you do want to play with the 8 common attractions, rule 0 it. I don't care. There's only 8. You need 10 technically, but
I guess
play
it's
with
the same thing with the 5 backgrounds.
Yep.
I'm gonna do a pod. There'll be one of the 5 that's left out, sadly, but we'll highlight them and do something fun, and that'll be that. And we can talk about it maybe on a podcast or something. Who knows?
So we danced around it a little bit. So this year we had this weird combo spring, combo early summer, that sort of thing. So, when we talk about like visibility of action and like, we're working behind the scenes, we're constantly talking. Usually it's a topic of conversation is originated by some idiot or something like that, typing like, hey, I don't I don't particularly understand this thing right here. Help me understand it. Or this is the way I see this based off of, this trend XYZ. What are your thoughts? Something like that, and will stimulate a conversation. So the first Weavers win, then the second Weavers win, kind of recatalyze this, focus on combo conversation, which, you hear all the pundits talk about occasionally because it drives views and gets clicks. And
me too. I mean,
that sort of thing.
Push the aggro, push the mid range. Let's counterattack it.
So the reality is, you're absolutely correct, and this will be coming out with the quarterly report this week. But the pendulum has swung back the other direction. To that end, we probably have talked about, I'm not going to say which ones, but we've probably talked about 15 cards as culprits. For the combo menace, over the last couple of months,
and other stuff, Archaeomancer stuff, and yada yada.
And what'll happen is, the good thing is we're collecting data on the competitive side. We did realize that we're not necessarily collecting enough data on the casual side. We're working on that. We get into these conversations about, well, hey, I'm seeing it from this perspective. What if we did X, Y, Z? And then we'll let it marinate for a day or two, what have you, then come back to it. Most of the time, it just ends up in a big nothing burger because, we allow the passions of the moment to build. We'll have, this outlined in conversation, take a day or two off from it, then come back and realize, okay, I didn't see this point that, Derek had brought up earlier. Okay, now that makes sense in my mind because I'm thinking about it, clearly. Well,
I didn't record about the bannings the day of. I waited like 3 or 4 days, I think, before we did. So because then I was able to be like, okay, I accept this. I don't like it. I didn't want it, but I accept it, and we move on with our lives.
So yeah, I mean that said, I mean we have talked about what the impact, and even some of that being hypothetical, like if we did this and this, what is the trickle down effect? What is the rippling effect of that? How would that impact the format? And we try to really dig in deep to see, the reality, because you never know until you do it.
I mean, it can be tough, but yeah, it either revitalizes the meta or it absolutely homogenizes the meta, and you don't really know.
And ultimately, and I'll be really honest with you, I don't think I'm giving away the farm with this one. In both of those conversations, because we had 2 big events. When I say multi-day events, talking about this combo in the last 6 months. At the end of the day, it all distilled down to just one thing: player responsibility. We can't legislate player responsibility. At the end of the day, that's
player responsibility.
Playing enough removal in their deck construction, not being greedy in the first couple of turns, and
having good threat the resources, and everything.
Yeah.
I referenced earlier externalities that go into making these decisions, and when you're looking at Weaver's tournament success or whatever, not only is the metagame pretty underdeveloped, but a lot of the players are undeveloped in the format. They're piloting brews that they may not have worked on enough. They are not making wise mulligan decisions. They are not making, wise play decisions. All of these things. And once, when we have a more cohesive metagame that kind of tracks from event to event, that is more easily referenceable, then maybe we have a better frame of things to work with. But as it stands now, there's just too many of these factors that make it really unreliable to make a solid decision on banning a card, which I think the bar has to be super high for. Also, we have to consider casual things too. But I'm just speaking from a competitive perspective.
No, I mean that's mainly what I was focusing on anyway, because anybody that we're going to attract, or that I'm going to attract, is going to be competitively minded, because if they're watching my channel, they're probably not super casual.
Well, you find competitive folks out there. I want you to think about something from this perspective, if you don't know this already. So I maintain the competitive, stats and database, website. I'm also a tournament player. So I'm not only am I working with the TOs to get the data after the fact, I'm actually on the ground playing the events, seeing the rounds, all of that stuff. My man Derek here is commentating most of these events, so he's getting the 30,000 foot view of all of most of the tables that are happening at these events. So this isn't the primary intention for us being around these events, they're just the same. I want to play. I'm a competitive
we do them
player.
because we're community members.
Exactly.
You know.
I'm that too. I'm a player and I want to play in these tournaments.
But the side effect of that is that we're pretty decently plugged in. You know, more so than, you know, most of the talking heads that you'd see. So,
I mean, I think especially in compared to just from my experience with interacting with anybody from like the PDH RC that is no longer with us, I've interacted with some of them. I've played games with some of them. You know, like they're fine, but like I don't feel that they were as plugged in because there was just so many of us in comparison.
Yeah,
if you go from like a cat, like EDH as a whole is like this huge chunk, right? And then you go to like, okay, casual is this much of it, and then like CDH is this much of it, and then you guys are like this much of it, and then so like there is a bigger portion of people that they had to deal with, of course. But at the same time, it also seemed like they were kind of just like taking feedback from people and not really like being boots on the ground,
experiencing
so to speak.
it. Yeah.
Like, even though I know those people were playing games and stuff because they all have channels and they were putting out gameplay videos, so they have to be playing the game. But like maybe they were just not like getting the same meta results that I don't know. You guys are doing something different, and I like it, and that's why I wanted to highlight it.
Yeah, like that's a good example, like of the kind of dynamic that we're talking about.
And now they're gone, so it's just you. You're the only RC out there now.
The sort of insight that we have as an RC, like for example, like Gatorbait Television, everyone's friend Gatorbait Television, winningest tournament grinder player that we have to offer in this format. Had some time ago a turn 3 win on Malcolm Kettis in a tournament. It involved him vomiting his whole hand onto the table to get a turn 2 Malcolm. Or turn 1 Malcolm or something like that. One on turn 3. That's a hand that fumbles to like a single piece of well-targeted removal, and nobody had it. So like that's just.
I literally just lost to a turn 4 Gretchen.
Like
and they were on the play. Same thing.
You're going up against like a skilled Malcolm Kettis player, a deck that is able to combo fast, is a known quantity, and yet nobody was able. Either they mismanaged their resources in the early turns, or they did not have access to interaction to stop this. And then that turn 3 win got a lot of people shaking the boots. Like, oh, do we need to ban something now? It's like absolutely not. Like it's these sorts of things, you know.
Like, that doesn't happen.
Right, and playing in the tournaments gives you that perspective. Me being able to bird them as a commentator gives me that perspective. So we have a lot of tools at our disposal to kind of parse out what we may or may not need to do.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys are a pretty well-rounded group that all has your different perspectives and provides a lot of different viewpoints and insights, and that's great. You all have built your own sorts of communities and your relationships with other people, and you know, I'm just a player out here. I just wanted to bring focus to the format.
Another main difference too, like outside of YouTube, the YouTube diversity was something that I desperately worked on, like helping people stand up channels and, you know, not necessarily funneling resources, but if I had time and energy and, you know, anything I could do to help, like, you know, creating that diaspora of YouTube channels associated with PDH, I've tried to help as much as possible. Otherwise, though, like another way that we differ too, and this is going to sound a little cabalish, and I apologize, but like, you know, we control the Reddits, you know, we control the Facebooks, we control, you know, like,
Ruffigan was a moderator on the Reddit, like one of the original moderators on the Reddit. Mm-hmm. He's one of our members. Yeah.
So, like the major points of communication we've worked over the years to consolidate and gather. Now, that doesn't mean that eventually there won't be, you know, other, you know, spin-off type social media outlets, and you know, in the same way that the YouTubes have done that, and to another extent like Discords, but like I hate saying we control, but like we are at the center of the largest outlets for the format.
All of your base belong to us.
Yeah, we don't like control messaging or anything. Like we just own them, and we.
Hey, well, I mean that's good because I mean, yeah, you can't have somebody come in and be like, "We're the thing," and they're not the thing because you already are the thing, you know. Like,
yeah, we're hardly like censoring people's opinions on, you know, various social media websites. It's just it's good for us to kind of have a front row seat to everything that's going on with those.
Yeah, that's the point. That's more the point that I was trying to
moderate the whole community, right? I mean, not moderate, but like see what's happening.
Well, a lot of us are still moderators on the PDH home-based Discord. I mean, like,
well, sure. Sure. It is moderation in the sense of like getting rid of toxicity and stuff. Obviously, those are all normal community building things. But like, I meant moderate in the sense of like you can see all of the dissent, for lack of a better term, but obviously not dissent. It's more like I want to unban these 5 cards. Why won't you let me unban these 5 cards? And you're just like, just rule 0 it.
In a way, though, like I can't speak for Derek because Derek does get annoyed. I know his cool demeanor doesn't illustrate the potential for being annoyed at something. He's only got a couple of emotes out there specifically speaking to this. But that's the thing. Like I actually welcome like the discourse largely because I love it when people go way out on a limb and I can just saw it down, behind them. But no, like, we welcome the discourse because ultimately what happens is, after they stray, there's this recentering effect that brings everybody back to the middle and we just keep going.
Like the common backgrounds thing, I was probably the most vocal proponent for keeping common backgrounds out of the command zone. I am more than happy to, back up my decision and have that conversation with anybody who wants to have it. I mean, if it doesn't bother me at all because I'm very comfortable with that decision, and I'm happy to have conversations with people about these sorts of things. And I have. I mean, a couple years ago when I first
you guys have all been a lot more reasonable individuals.
When I started being a lot more active on socials, like Discord and Twitter and all that stuff, like that was one of the reasons why, was to communicate like this is why these cards are not allowed in the command zone, because people did not understand, and there was a lot of kind of bad faith actors out there spreading a lot of bad information. So
I actually was in favor of the common backgrounds in the beginning. I have grown to be against them.
I understand.
So,
but just like as an example, like that stuff doesn't bother me, and I welcome that discourse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and as I said, dissent is a kind of it comes across as kind of aggro, but like it was more of just like people having these other opinions, like why can't we have this, and like you guys being able to come up with a cohesive answer. That's great, and you being able to do that across all of the platforms is also great.
Well, you got to get YouTube money. You can't get YouTube money without hot takes. Come on, Islane, step it up, buddy. Love you.
I've had hot takes already on this episode, and they got shot down. So, what are you gonna do? Hot take. Let me have that that Baldur's Gate dungeon thing that you can't have. I want that.
The wilderness is that the one?
Yeah. Oh, the one that's got like 20.
Yeah,
I would love.
I want that to be legal. Give me that, please. That's what I want. Hot take. Let me have it. That's not even a hot take. It's just like that would be fucking cool. But also, I guess hot take rule 0 is still a thing. Yep. And if your play group says I don't give a fuck, then play whatever the fuck you want.
That's something that's great about this community and our rules committee and advisory group. All of us, we believe very strongly that just do whatever you want to do. I mean, honestly, we did have a
tournament rule set is all you need. If you're going to play a tournament, you need a rule set, and that is basically the official rule set of the format. And then
our job is to
everything else is
a baseline. Yeah, establish and maintain a baseline. That's our job. But everything else, you guys can take care of yourselves.
We can get jiggy with it too. I think we've got something in the pipeline now that which I'm not going to reveal, but that shows that we're more than willing to kind of let our hair down a little bit. And,
okay, well, which one of you wants to let your hair down and build a common background pairing to play on my stream forthcoming?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, yeah, I'm less the competitive player that Clay is, but I'm always down to clown.
Just being able to be like, hey, look, RC members will break the rules once in a while. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. I want to be devil's advocate here.
Yeah, I almost think you want Derek anyway, because that's the thing. So Derek is, I don't know if you know this, but he's quite the little brewer, So turning him loose with a kind of, I was going to say a new concept.
Something that breaks the rules, but yeah.
Of course, Derek has thought about the common backgrounds on occasion. Of course he has. Yeah. So he's got something in mind right now. I'm quite sure of it. And he's probably going to line all you gentlemen up at the bar and push your stool in for you.
I'm going to try and push somebody's stool in with Rasad again, because Rasad needs a better background, and there happens to be a couple of them that are pretty spicy at the common level. But anyhow, that discussion happened. I'm super into that idea. So yeah, Derek, if you're down, we can do that sometime. We'll show everybody that RC members break the rules too. We all like Rule 0. We can do what we want. But also, like, this is their baseline. This is why they have those reasonings and whatnot. But, yeah, we'll have links down below to cpdh.guide, the PDH home base, all that good stuff. This is probably going to be the last, like, Pauper-focused episode for the podcast here. I'm going to try and get back to some CDH topics here again. But I just kind of wanted to shine some light on it. And there's actually going to be more conversational stuff. I have some stuff lined up with some other people that I've already worked with. And then, of course, the gameplay videos as well. Those are still going to be featured on the channel. So, again, thank you guys so much, Clay. Derek, it's a pleasure as always.
That's my pleasure. Really.
And also, thank you so much for putting in the effort that you do. You guys have built a great community format and a lot of cool tools. I mean, obviously, you didn't do alone, but it's clearly a labor of love, and it shows, and it's
the people deserve it. We're nothing without the community, so it's
100.
Who we owe it all to.
And I mean, ever since I joined it a couple years ago, I've been trying to do whatever I can to kind of help with that, and I hope that this maybe shines some more light on the format and you guys' projects.
And you've been doing a good job too.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I haven't gotten any recognition for it, but I'll take that. Anyhow, everybody in the audience here, thank you so much for listening and or watching. And don't forget to like, subscribe, leave some comments down below if you want to send some hot takes towards these guys. They will surely be watching the comments to find out what you have to say. This will also get posted on Reddit and other things, so it'll be around, so you can give us some feedback if you have any questions for these guys or anything else that you would like to direct at them. We'll have their socials and stuff down below as well. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yep, thank you.